The original 2004 Star Wars Battlefront is a title many remember fondly. While you might have originally picked it up either because of the franchise it's a part of, or because it just seemed like a novel thing to try at the time, surely if you're watching this video, it's because Battlefront 1 left an impression on you. And not without good reason to either. It is simply a fun game, and one that's still being enjoyed by plenty of people, even now 2 decades, a couple spin-offs, a sequel, and a whole franchise reboot later. And I want to make the case that the reason the original Battlefront has lasted so long isn't just because of the brand name it's attached to, or the story, or the nostalgia factor alone, but specifically because as a team-based shooter, it shows off some of the best map design in gaming, period. So please join me as I briefly break down what makes each of the original Star Wars Battlefront's maps so good. Today, I wanted to talk about what I think it's very appropriate to call Battlefront's most open map, Kamino, Tipoca City. I think one of the major strengths of the original Battlefront, and the 2005 sequel for that matter, is how just about every map's layout varies so much. The different locations aren't just aesthetic changes. More importantly, every individual map's layout and size and what vehicles it might have all impacted what the gameplay on it was like. Even though you always had the same playable classes and weapons, you often got a vastly different gameplay experience from map to map. Today, I wanted to highlight a location that sets itself apart from the rest of the game for its use of wide open spaces and the longest sightlines anywhere in the game. Most maps in Battlefront make use of open areas and the occasional narrower choke point to some extent. That's perhaps just inherent to the game being a team-based shooter centered around capturing command posts. But Kamino here is arguably the purest expression of that form, because the Battlefront developers very deftly took advantage of the fact that this planet's entire habitable surface is a series of artificial structures to turn that element from the Star Wars movies into a unique playable location in this game. And the gameplay location we ended up getting because of that is one with an unparalleled amount of flat open areas, overhead room, and an almost uninterrupted focus on core infantry combat mechanics. It's a map that might not be everyone's ideal cup of tea, but it does have its fans, and it certainly stands out. So let's take a look at it a little closer and see what makes it tick. Let's start just establishing the basics. Kamino is the in-game capital of the Republic faction, which also means it's only available to play on in the Clone Wars era in instant action, multiplayer, or galactic conquest matches. So every round here begins the same way, at the very least. As we see in the movies, Kamino itself is evidently entirely covered in one big ocean, and all its infrastructure sits on massive stilts jutting out of the water. How that's been represented in Battlefront means we ended up getting one of the most uniquely designed locations that I, for one, have ever seen any team shooter game like this have, where the entire gameplay area is essentially a number of relatively small, flat discs suspended high above a kill plane. There may be a lot of potential hazards in Battlefront, but it's not often you can just fall completely off the map. In any case, it's just something else that, along with the dark, stormy weather constantly going on here, that makes this whole map feel very foreboding. It's good design to have little details and bits of design like that, which make the locations represented in a game feel accurate to the series it's based off of. But a map's look and tone is just the start. We need to talk about the actual gameplay. The playable area on this map is one of the simplest to describe in the whole game. That simple outdoor suspended disc design extends to a total of 8 completely open, interconnected outer platforms, all of which are more or less the same, and which bud off one side of a much larger main platform. The bigger platform is functionally one long enclosed hallway, ringed by a narrow balcony around its perimeter. 6 of the 8 small platform zones host their own capturable spawn point command post, as does the center of the enclosed hallway structure. The Republic starts every match here in control of just the big enclosed platform, and the droids start with just one of the outer ones. So the first minute or so of every round here always looks like a mad scramble to cover and capture as much territory as possible right out of the gate. Given that every platform is itself linked with a bridge or walkway to 3 or 4 others in a web-like design, getting from one to any other quickly isn't typically too hard, and you'll very rarely be boxed in or surrounded by the enemy on all sides in a match here. Although it should be noted that not all of the platforms are exactly level with one another. Some are higher or lower than their immediate neighbours. So while you'll always be able to run from one to the next, you won't always have a perfectly clear view of where you're going until you get there. That's just about it in terms of map geometry to describe here. A handful of the outer platforms do have these small bunker or pillbox-like mini-structures jutting off of them, but that's essentially it in terms of anything approaching usable cover. There's a few health and ammo droids here and there, and a handful of these scenery object crates and lights scattered around some of the platforms, but nothing major. No vehicles, no big set-piece areas, just platforms. Even the big interior of the clone's starting building is just a purely functional, monochromatic white inside. That said, I don't think this sparse design is necessarily bad though. I feel like any game like this lives or dies on how much enjoyable variety it has amongst all its map design. And that means some maps will be busy and crowded, and some will be leaner and more focused on pure gameplay fundamentals. It's good to have both types of map in a game like Battlefront. And you have to admit, this harsh, sparse platform city is perfectly accurate to what we saw in Attack of the Clones, so you can't really fault the game designers for accurately portraying their source material. But I, for one, would rather not make apologies for the fact the Kamino map is like this, because I think the gameplay here is good, without needing to make any excuses for it. I like that the minimal cover and the narrow walkways means you get intense battles. Paradoxically, the open-air bridges between the platforms are both incredibly narrow choke points and also completely exposed from all angles. So anytime you get a group from both teams run into one another, it's a meat grinder. And I love how, because all but 2 of the command points on this map start out uncontrolled, who gets what can change every match, and it can change a lot over the course of a match too. And because all the spawn points are on the platforms themselves, as soon as you load back in, if you're killed, you're instantly right back in the action again. I think that's great. This is a map for people who want to play the game quickly, without messing around, and on a fairly even playing field, where what wins battles is fundamental gameplay ability. I find that if you want to do well here, easiest way to do that is simply getting good with your main soldier class. That's who excels at pushing from one platform to the next. Or play as the sniper class and practice just racking up headshots here. Kamino surely must have some of the longest sightlines in the entire game, especially when you're on one of the more elevated platforms. Or you could go for a more unconventional approach and do something like play as the technician class. Since you'll always be close to the rest of your team, you can practice giving out your health and ammo packs and notice how that helps your guys stay alive longer. Or play the demolitions trooper and find out how useful mines on narrow, low-visibility bridges can be. Or be the jet trooper and just fly around, being annoying behind the enemy's main line. You really can't go wrong here, just so long as you're decent at the basic mechanics of Battlefront. You'll have a good time on Kamino. But that's something that's largely true of pretty much all of the maps in the game, really. It's just a marker of how well the original Battlefront was made. And that said, if you might like to hear me break down what makes so many other Battlefront maps so good, there will be a Battlefront map analysis playlist linked at the top of the description. or you can subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next video. Either way, goodbye for now, and have a lovely day.